But I don't think this is what you want on Sunday or is this what you want? It is.
Lord, send your spirit to this place. Lord, listen to your children pray. Send us your love, send us your power, send us your grace. Lord, listen to your children pray. Lord, send your spirit to this place. Lord, listen to your children pray. Send us your love, send us your power, send us your grace. Something's gonna happen that the world has never known. When the people of the Lord get down to pray, doors gonna swing open and the walls come tumbling down. When the people of the Lord get down to pray. When the people of the Lord, when the people of the Lord, when the people of the Lord get down to pray, doors gonna swing open and the walls come tumbling down. When the people of the Lord get down to pray. Lord, listen to your children pray. Lord, send your spirit to this
Welcome, friends. Hello. My name is Lena Blunt. I'm the education coordinator here at Pendle Hill, and I am delighted to provide the sort of commercial introduction before we settle into this evening, as my dear friend and colleague John Meyer, who normally does that, is actually in a program as we speak, aiming for justice, race reparations, and right paths. So he's being attentive to that work, so I'm happy to step in his stead, and have big shoes to fill. Hope you all stick with me. Welcome. Welcome to our first Monday lecture series. This is a series that we do on the first Monday of every month from 7:30 to 9, free and open to the public. I'm excited that for March, we'll have two lovely speakers joining to co-deliver the first Monday lecture in March. That is Mary Wade and Drick Boyd, The Search for Common Ground in the Midst of Division. So if you can join us next first Monday in March, that's March 2nd, from 7:30 to 9. This is exploring in particular the work of Howard Thurman. Flyers are available in the lobby if you would like to find some more information there. Some other upcoming lectures and events just to quickly share with you all for this evening. This Friday evening from 7:30 to 9 p.m., Melchor Hall, who is the facilitator for the Aiming for Justice program, will be delivering a talk on her book, Naming a Transnational Black Feminist Framework, Writing in Darkness. Her book will also be available for purchase that evening, and she'll just be sharing about her incredible work, calling upon the discipline of international relations. So a little more information about her work in that discipline and in her book is available on that flyer. Please consider joining us this Friday for that event. And just one invitation, looking a little bit further ahead in time, but many of you might be interested in the Opening to the Heart of Worship weekend program later in April with Christopher Salmond, which is really about centering into that fullness, and encourage folks also to check out that flyer in the lobby as well. One final commercial here is that our Radical Faithfulness in Action program, which is actually the program that introduced me to Pendle Hill back in 2015. So that's just a thing to share. But it's a program for those who are looking to live their values in the world, those who are in spiritual community and want to live those values more boldly, or those who are doing social justice work and really trying to find that grounding and that sustaining energy for that work, that sustaining faithfulness for that work. We have applications open. Early bird deadline is February 20th. And the final deadline for those applications is March 10th. The facilitators of that program are Matthew Armstead and Irva Baden. If you have any questions about that program, the flyer is in the lobby, and I'm also excited to share that next Wednesday, February 12th, from 6 to 7 p.m., do you need water, friend? Okay, great. No, you're fine. I just want to make sure you're all right. Next Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m., there will actually be a webinar where past participants of Radical Faithfulness will be sharing a little bit about their experience. That's free and open to the public. If you're just curious about the program or know folks who might be curious about the program, it's a great opportunity just to get a taste of what it's like. So if you have questions about that, please see me afterward. We'll also be sharing the link for that on our Facebook page, so can make sure everyone gets that. Without further ado, I'd like to invite folks to silence your cell phones. Take it out, silence it, put it away. And I'd like, Yes, and before we settle in here, I'd also like to just take a moment to acknowledge and welcome us to this land. Welcome us to Lenape-Hoking, and recognize that the Lenape peoples who lived in Lenape-Hoking, who still live in Lenape-Hoking, who are still with us today, very much through colonization violence, were forced off of their traditional home, the head of the Hudson River down to the Delaware River, and now many you can be found in Ontario, Canada, further west in the Oklahoma regions, but still there are 3 recognized tribes in the area. The politics of that, of course, is also fraught and complicated. And I just want to invite an acknowledgement that as we are here today, that process of colonization and displacement is still ongoing. Invite folks to look into the work of the Ramapo Nation up near Mahwah, New Jersey. They've been in active court cases, working to practice their traditional religion openly on their traditional lands, and also want to recognize the Lenape tribe of Delaware and the other indigenous peoples who are very much here today in these homelands, as are those who have been moved from this place. So we like to acknowledge that history, acknowledge that land as a part of seeking the truth together about that. Thank you, friends. I'd like to welcome Tracy Jeltz-Sullivan, our interim executive director, here to welcome Marcelle.
Good evening, friends. It's a special delight for me to be able to introduce Marcelle. Marcelle and I both lived on campus between 2006 and 2010, and I was just an interloper spouse, and she was a Quaker studies teacher, and was very well known for her courses on prayer, on discernment, and on Quakerism. And particularly, I heard from students about the creative ways that she created courses that had experiential power in their own lives. So she has continued to ministry around care for nurturing faithfulness and spirituality, especially among Quakers. You may know of her 2 books, Our Life is Love, The Quaker Spiritual Journey, and more recently, A Guide to Faithfulness Groups. We're very excited that Pendle Hill will be publishing a pamphlet, Cultivating a Culture of Faithfulness, later in the spring. And all of this, of course, is tied to her current work of being one of the core teachers in the Nurturing Faithfulness 9-month program that is a combination of residential and probably internet and phone non-residential work throughout the 9-month period. So I am delighted you're here with me, and I'm really looking forward to the ministry that Marcelle has to bring to us whenever she is ready.
Thank you, friends, for coming out tonight. It's a pleasure to see all of you. How wonderful. I see a lot some members of my monthly meeting and members of lots of different groups that I've been a part of. Some more than one monthly meeting that I've been a part of. It's really wonderful. And I know that there are people watching in distant places, and I'm thinking of you too, and glad that you're participating in that way. I must say that that song that we heard at the beginning, those as we were settling in, some of you heard Tribe One singing, Lord, listen to your children praying. And that's a song that I first sang when I was in residence here at Pendle Hill. Nina Spann was dean of Pendle Hill at the time, and she also in the wintertime led a gospel choir, and she taught us that song, and we filled the barn with that sound. But it was quite as loud today. And as I was thinking, wow, I didn't realize it was going to be so loud, and maybe some of you were thinking that too, but I was also thinking, yes, it's time to make our prayers loud. It's time to let our voice be loud, and that's what the song was about. As I've prayed about tonight's lecture, what has come to me again and again is to make this an opportunity to do what it's about and not just to talk about it. So one of my favorite cartoons that I've never seen, somebody told me about it once, that it was from the New Yorker. There was two doors, and over one door it said lecture about God, and there was a long line in front of that door waiting to get in. And over the other door it said God. Nobody was waiting. So I hope this will be an experience of God among us, Spirit among us, Spirit within us tonight. And I hope it will be an experience of creating beloved community through supporting faithfulness. And so my challenge has been how to make that possible. So one way I'm going to ask all of you to help me be faithful. I'm going to ask all of you to hold me in the light so that I will be faithful tonight. I have 5 pages of notes here, which is probably more than I'll be able to talk about in the allotted time, and I'll just have to sort of be led by the Spirit. But I've realized that faithfulness is not just about what you do and not just about what you say, but how you be, your being, your presence. And in fact, that's one thing that we're called to cultivate, is our presence to each other, our presence to the world, our presence to God. And in that connection, allow the Spirit to work through us and through us into the world. So when I realized I had to sort of do what I was talking about, I started asking all kinds of people close to me, people I didn't even know, to pray for me tonight. So I stood up last week in my meeting and I said I was very anxious and asked for prayers. And many people came up to me and offered really beautiful encouragement and advice. I've sent emails to friends I haven't been in touch with in a long time asking for their prayers. I posted on Facebook and asked all my Facebook friends to pray for me. So there's a lot of prayer being directed in this room, and there's the presence of everyone here, which is bringing that presence of the Spirit among us. I want to thank my husband, Terry, who often has served as my elder over the 9+ years we've been hanging out together. But he's been doing double duty before this lecture, really helping me to think about what I'm called to do and what's coming up. And in any case, so I am here for your faithfulness, and I'm holding you in the light as I speak, and hoping that whatever comes through me can be a spark and an encouragement to you in your life of faith and faithfulness. Our faithfulness really matters, each one of us, and maybe especially collectively. I think faithfulness has always mattered and has always made a difference, but we're living in a time of sort of huge changes and possible impending or unfolding catastrophes and disasters. It's a time of danger, but it's also a time of opportunity. I think one of the things that's happening is that this crisis that we're facing could be an immense pressure for the human race to evolve. We have capabilities and capacities we are not using. We've gotten along fine without using them. It's challenging and uncomfortable to develop new capabilities and to relate to each other in new ways. And God willing and our faithfulness responding, this can be a time in which humanity really does evolve. And we all have a part to play in that. So supporting faithfulness, I think it occurred to me that maybe I should talk about what is faith and what is faithfulness. In our time, a lot of people equate faith with belief and think that faith is a matter of believing in certain things about God and believing in certain doctrines. And although those things can be an important part of faith, Quakers have had the sense that faith has a lot more to do with experiencing spiritual reality. I looked in the dictionary, and that the definition of faith as belief is actually definition number 2 in the dictionary I looked at. Definition number 1 is complete trust or confidence in someone or something. So we think of faith that way, complete trust or confidence in God, in the light, in Christ, in the goodness inherent in the world, in whatever it is that we have faith in. Of course, early friends had faith in the presence of Jesus and the light of Christ. Nowadays, many people have many words, and some people are uncomfortable with the anthropomorphizing of God that has happened. So I love the fact that early friends, who were really focused on that direct experience, used many different words to talk about their experience because no one word would cover it. Eternal being was one of the phrases George Fox used that I relate to. Ultimate reality, the ground of all being, the light. So faith and faithfulness have to do with knowing that directly, cultivating our experience of whatever it is that we have complete trust or confidence in. We may not have complete trust or confidence in anything, so it's about sort of opening up to the experience that allows our trust and our faith to grow. Faithfulness, so that's a beginning of faithfulness, is learning how to do that. It's learning to listen to that, to pay attention to that, to pay attention to the still small voice of God within us. And then when we hear that voice, or we hear the nudges, or we hear the inklings, and we may not be sure whether it's God, or it's the truth in our heart, or some other voices, then the next step in faithfulness is discernment. Where is this coming from? Where is this impulse? Where are these ideas coming from? And we may think it's God, some things are coming from God that are actually coming from voices that we've taken in from society, from our parents, from our culture, from our painful experiences may have given us certain ideas or caused us to believe that we needed to do certain things in order to be loved or in order to be part of society. So we really need discernment. And Quakers have believed that if something is really coming from the Spirit, that others who are also attuning to the Spirit will be able to sense that. And so we have learned to help each other collectively with discernment. And then beyond discernment with clearness. So when we're sensing, we may be sensing what Quakers have called a concern, that is a burden of attention that's being placed on us, attention to a certain thing in society that is wrong or hurtful or painful, and we're being called to give attention to that, to learn about it, to notice how it happens, which isn't the same thing as having a leading to action. But when we're under the burden of a concern, then we may get a leading to action. And Quakers believe that that it's not only good principles that can guide us, but actually God's Spirit, the divine Spirit, the truth in our own heart can lead us to particular actions, individually and collectively. And when we begin to feel that, or if it's a multitude of leadings, or if it's something that's going to take us through a long period in our lives, we call it's a call. But we help each other become clear. Yes, you are called to that. And I have been a member of 3 successive meetings over 25 or more years that have helped me get clear that I am, as my minute of religious service says, called by the Spirit to a ministry of spiritual nurture, that to foster awareness of the divine presence which resides in each person and is active in the world. Her ministry includes facilitating retreats and gatherings, teaching, writing, helping people with discernment, and praying with individuals and groups. So I went in 3 different meetings. I went through 3 different clearness processes. And in fact, in my latest book, I describe sort of the process that I went through with meetings and clearness and discernment and the challenges that I experienced in the clearness process, and how helpful that was in coming to a real place of clarity. Yes, the Spirit is calling me to this. You know, I may not be, this was more than 20 years ago. Someone on my Clearness Committee said, if you were applying for a job to do this, I wouldn't hire you. You're not that good a speaker. And he said, you know, I've spent a lot of time in Buddhist communities among people who think they're enlightened, who are not enlightened, and I know you're not enlightened. So it was challenging. It was like a little scary, and I thought about it. I was like, I'm not applying, first of all, for a professional job. No one has given me a professional salary for the ministry that I've done most of my life, except maybe 4 years when I was at Pendle Hill. So I wasn't applying for a professional job, first of all. And second of all, I wasn't claiming to be enlightened. What I got clear about was I really feel like the Spirit of God is calling me to do this. That's my only qualification. And that's the only one I need. You know, that's what Quakerism is about. What is God calling us to do? And can we recognize that in each other? Can we name that? Can we support that? But those questions were really helpful because it helped me find that place where I could rest, you know, in that place of the Spirit, the place of God, the light of Christ. So then once you get clear about something, many times Quaker meetings don't have much to help you once you get clear. Yep, you're clear, good luck. Go carry out your leading, you know, follow your call. And so that's one of the things why I've written this book, A Guide to Faithfulness Groups, is that there are ways that Quakers have and that some meetings are actively engaged in and you know, historically did also, to help people, you know, when you get clear about your leading, what's next. Because once you get clear what your leading is, you still need discernment, step by step. You're nodding because you have been following a call that's unfolding. Right, and it's like you need help with discernment every step along the way. You need encouragement. You will run into obstacles, and some of the obstacles are outside and some of them are inside, and you need help in understanding what the obstacles are and how to be faithful in the face of those obstacles, how to let God heal you of the ones that are inside. I said that faithfulness begins with being present to reality, with presence. And so I'd like to sort of invite you to a kind of short guided meditation about that, of experiencing your own being and your own presence that we bring here, that we create and experience together. So first of all, I invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And just pay attention to your breath and to the presence of your body in this room. And your awareness of other people in this room with you. And perhaps your awareness that you're here as part of an extended faith community of which you're a part. See if you can sense that. Quakers and other people of faith have been coming to this room for 90 years to help each other pay attention to God and the call. See if you can feel that. Like 90 years of people coming here for worship, for learning, for encouragement, for prayer, right here. And they came out of a tradition of Quakerism, hundreds of years of Quakers seeking to be faithful in community. And whether or not we're Quakers, sitting here, we touch upon that. We can be blessed by that. And they rested upon the community of the history of Christianity and the teachings of Jesus and the presence of Christ, which many of them experienced as their inward teacher. And beyond that, the teachings of Moses and the prophets. So yeah, if you can feel how we're all part of this long lineage of people who've been seeking to know God and to be faithful. We just heard about the history of this land and the people who have lived on this land for centuries, the Lenni Lenape, who were also seeking in their way to know God and be faithful. And this land was once a primeval forest, untouched by human beings. Just life on this land alive. See if you can feel the presence of that. And supporting all that, what some have called the ground of being, the spiritual matrix from which all of this arises, God, ultimate reality. And we're a part of it. It supports us. And all of this is here to help us and guide us in our time as we learn how to be faithful. What are we being called to in our time? Just take a couple moments to breathe with that. And then you can open your eyes, maybe wiggle your fingers and toes. And see if you can hold on to that sense of presence as I speak. There are many kinds of faithfulness that are called for from us and from our communities. The presence I talked about, integrity, truthfulness, love, faithfulness in our interpersonal relationships, in our relationship to society, to other human beings and societies, faithfulness in our relationship to earth and with the plant and animal kingdoms. There's a whole lot more in the world that we don't even know about, and we're called to be in relationship with all of it. We are in relationship with all of it. We're called to live in integrity with all of it. Or shalom, in peace and harmony with all others, with the planet, with God. And I think one of the things the Quakers have said is that we're called to live in conscious awareness of the divine indwelling presence. God, the light, Christ, lives within us and is present within us and is ready always to guide us, individually and collectively. The kingdom of heaven is within us. Early Friends really had a radical theology, and we've covered up some of that, I think. They talked about the scriptural passages that called us to grow into the fullness of being sons and daughters of God. And people may say glibly, oh, we're all divine, especially some groups say that glibly or easily, and others do not. But what does that mean? The early Quakers quoted a scripture passage that said we're called to be partakers of the divine nature. What does that mean to have a divine nature? Or at least to grow in maturity to that divine nature. And that's what we need to accompany each other in. We need to be asking these questions. What are we called to? Who are we really? What's our relationship to God and one another and the earth and the future that wants to emerge? So we create beloved community in lots of ways. Through spiritual friendships. Sometimes those friendships happen in marriage, in families, in spiritual sharing groups, in meetings, in committees. We're called to create beloved community in oversight committees. I had my introduction to that when within months of coming to a Quaker meeting, someone said, I'm in the School of the Spirit Spiritual Nurturer program and I need people to be on my oversight committee. And so, here she is. And so, some of us accompanied her for 2 years, hearing about what she was learning in the program, how that challenged her, how it was challenging her to change her life, to do things in a different way. Eventually her life changed quite radically. She left the job she was in to find something that fit more fully with where her heart was and what God was calling her to. I've been on 2 of those oversight committees. I've also been on the oversight committee of a friend who had a call, a leading that was recognized by their monthly meeting and also by the yearly meeting. And I served on committees both on the monthly meeting level and the yearly meeting level for, I don't know, I think it was 6 years. It was an incredibly profound experience, and I recommend it. Being a witness to someone else struggling with big questions of faithfulness. Is God really calling me to this, and what will that do? How will that change my life? How does that challenge me? What risks is God asking me to take? And sometimes he thought God was asking him to do things that the committee said, no, we don't think so. We think that's symbolic. There's something to learn there, but that doesn't mean you're supposed to actually do that literally. So the committee had a sort of a balancing function, listening together. But it was a profound learning, and some of us who were on that committee began to realize we too were called, and we too had leadings that we needed support with. And that's one of the risks of being on an oversight committee is you realize, oh, I too am called. I too have leadings. I too am a child of God. I too am called to be faithful. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I think we should do it a lot more. And then, if you do feel you have a call or a leading, clearness committees. And how many people have been on a clearness committee for membership or marriage? So most of the people in this room have experienced the clearness committee. How many people have been on a committee for another person? Yeah. How many people experienced that as a profoundly sacred experience of helping someone with discernment? It can be. I was while I was a teacher at Pendle Hill of the Discerning Our Calls class, we had sample clearness committees. And there would come a time when the person who was the focus began to really speak the truth from their heart. And you could tell it was different from what had come before when there's a lot of questions and ideas and doubts. And then the questions of the committee would come and the person would begin to speak the truth. And we could hear it. And it was almost like chills would go through you. It's like, oh, now we're on holy ground. This is really sacred. And they're saying the sacred truth. So a clearness committee is a wonderful thing. It takes 4 to 6 people to meet with you. You write a paper in advance, a little overview, or they read it. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of dedicated time from the group. And so I've had actually many clearness committees, but it's a lot to ask for if you have a clearness committee over and over again. So a better way to do it, if you want that ongoing support, is to have a faithfulness group. So a faithfulness group is like a mutual clearness committee for everyone in the group. So everyone gets a turn, like each time you meet, 2 people have an hour of the group's attention. So if you have 6 people in the group and you meet once a month, you get to be the center once every 3 months. And it's not the same as having a clearness committee all dedicated to you that meets for 2.5 hours. But it meets over and over again. And if your faithfulness group stays together for years, it's like an ongoing mutual support and clearness. And it also goes beyond clearness, because as I said, clearness is you get clear. I have a leading, I have a call. And faithfulness is, how do I carry it out? What do I need to do to carry it out? What's in my way? What's blocking me? And your committee can help you with, your mutual group, your faithfulness group can help you with all those things. So in this book, I talk about the skills that are useful for faithfulness groups. There are also skills that are useful for spiritual friendships and for clearness committees. The first one, a lot of these are going to be familiar to you, deep listening. That's something that Quakers have emphasized a lot. Patricia Loring called Quakerism a listening spirituality. So we learn to listen to ourselves, to the truth, the deep truth within us. We learn to listen to each other. We learn to listen for the voice of God, or the nudgings of the promptings of the Spirit, and we learn to listen for that in each other and in ourselves. Spirit is often subtle, and so it takes attention, and it takes valuing what we experience, even if it's subtle, humble, even if it seems like it's I don't know if it was God or the Spirit or not. It was just a little nudge. So it helps to have a group to share it with and to value it and say, oh, listen to that, listen to that. Because when you pay attention to the Spirit and you give it regular attention, the voice sometimes becomes a little louder. Or you begin to understand the language that the Spirit uses, which is often in images instead of words, or feelings, or direct knowings. So deep listening is key. The next thing is asking evoking questions. And these questions are good for clearness committees also, spiritual friendships. These are open questions. And the purpose of the question is not to satisfy the curiosity of the person who asked the question, but to help the focused person explore something more deeply. And particularly explore how the Spirit is at work in them. So here are some sample questions. How do you sense God or Spirit at work in and through you when you're seeking to serve, or when you're seeking to do whatever it is you're seeking to do, or in your relationship that you're asking us to focus on? What images, phrases, scripture passages, quotes, or songs are sources of guidance or inspiration at this time? I've learned to pay attention to the songs that I spontaneously start singing in my mind. They sometimes are a message from the Spirit. And sometimes the words are different from the actual lyrics of the song. It's like speaking to my condition. Sometimes I think that the images are a more primary language than words. And so it took me a long time to pay attention to images and begin to sort of translate them. But it's worth the effort. Here's another evoking question. What might help you relax and trust more in your efforts to hear and follow divine guidance? So this is asking a person to pay attention to what they already know. And they may not know that they know the answer until you ask them the question, and they have to think about it. Oh, what does help me relax and trust more? Oh, something will come. So I have a query for you. I'm going to give you just a minute to think about it. When have you felt faithful? Now I'm going to ask you a variation of this question, but I'm going to ask you to pay attention to your heart's wisdom. So often we go into our thinking, and that often comes up with a response. But if we just pay attention to what does my heart have to say about that? There may not be as many words. The answer that comes may be a memory, a feeling, an impression. See what happens when you ask your heart. Ask your heart, when am I faithful? When am I faithful? Did a different kind of answer come? What was the difference? People are still wanting to ask their heart, when am I faithful?
You're waiting for an answer.
I was. Do you have one?
I was just thinking that when I do the thing that I felt was a risk.
When you do the thing that you felt was a risk, that feels faithful. Mm-hmm. Thank you. When I first started attending Friends meetings, when I first started coming to Pendle Hill, people said to me, "Oh, there was so much power at the beginning of Quakerism." There was in fact, a friend of mine who was in my meeting and in my dream group, who was a birthright friend, and she said, "At the beginning of Quakerism, there was so much power. I wish we had the same power now." And I was excited. What was it? What was it? And I started reading the writing of early Friends, starting with George Fox. And then some of them weren't so accessible. It took me actually years before I could understand some of the writing of early Friends. And that was my question, what was the spiritual power that they experienced? And a lot of my answers are in this book, 10 Elements of the Quaker Spiritual Journey. But the main thing was that they were paying attention to God, and they found that experience of God within, and not just in other people interpreting scripture to them and telling them what it meant. And so that one of the ways that we too can live in the same power of the Spirit is to help each other look at God and sense the presence and sense the guidance of the Spirit and allow the Spirit to be active in us and initiate in us and act through us. And one of the things the early Friends said a lot was that when they discovered this reality that the presence of God was within, the presence of Christ, the light was within, guiding them, teaching them, they said, "Oh, that was there all along. I just didn't know what it was, and it seemed too humble. I was expecting, the second coming of Christ to be a strong man on a big horse." Right. And I was overlooking the little babe in the manger of my own heart. So that we too, when we look for God within us, what we find is usually subtle and humble little nudges or impressions or that we have to learn, we have to pay attention to, we have to value, and we have to help each other pay attention to it. Because it's a countercultural thing to do. Our culture is very busy. It's always trying to distract us. We actually have a lot of suffering inside. All of us have suffering inside because we live in a culture that asks us to suppress so much of who we really are. To suppress our feelings, our intuition, our deep knowing, our connections to each other and the earth. We are all suffering, and it's too painful to be aware of that all the time. So we numb our own suffering, and in doing that we numb our sensitivity to lots of things. So we have to help each other. We have to help each other be more ready to be alive and aware and feeling and paying attention to the Spirit and to intuition. We have to help each other open to the light, to allow the light to be in us, to act through us, to speak through us, to heal through us, to allow ourselves to be the presence of God acting in the world. And that was one of the keys I found in early Friends, is that they discovered the difference between doing something because you thought God wanted you to do it, or you thought it was the right thing to do, and actually letting the Spirit be the initiator. It seems like maybe a subtle difference, but they found that it was very profound. And I know that in my own life, once I have an idea of what I think God wants to do, I'm ready to go and be in charge again. okay, I know what I'm going to, and it's a constant habit. I'm moving up to my head. It's like partly like that, rather than staying in my heart and allowing myself to pay attention to the immediate guidance of the Spirit in the moment. But this is something that we need to help each other learn. And this is something that my faithfulness groups have helped me learn, is when we sit together, come together with people who also want to do the same thing, who also want to be faithful. And when you sit with people who are also seeking the same thing and asking questions to help you pay more attention to the Spirit, it really helps. I mean, having a culture in which other people are seeking to be faithful together is a great support. And even though in my faithfulness group, say we have 6 people, so I get to have 1 hour every 3 months, that's not a lot. But the thing is that each time someone gives a presentation, I hear something of my own story. And the questions that come to me for another person are also questions that resonate in my own mind and my own experience. Recently, our faithfulness group met, and we had a little time left over, and we said, wow, the things you're saying and the things I'm hearing, there's a lot going on, and even though it seems like we're following different calls and different leadings, there's something common happening that we want to pay attention to. The same Spirit working in all of us in the unique and different ways that they are. And I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to move on. Talk about prayer and worship. Prayer is a word that many liberal friends are uncomfortable with. It's easier to say, hold something in the light. And one of the reasons that's easier is because there's no implication that we are trying to tell God what we think God should do. But actually prayer covers a lot more than that. So that way that we sometimes see that's uncomfortable for us is not the only kind of prayer there is. But I think any kind of prayer that you are sincere about is good. Pray as you can, not as you can't. Pray as you feel moved to. But I have found that praying for one another is one of the most powerful things we can do. And I learned a way to do it in small groups at the annual conference called Quakers in Pastoral Care and Counseling, which takes place in Richmond, Indiana every year and involves friends from different branches. So liberal unprogrammed friends, conservative Christian friends, programmed pastoral friends all come together. These are friends whose work, ministry, is to nurture each other. And so being in a small group with these people and having an opportunity, hearing them pray for me the first year was a little bit uncomfortable. I wasn't used to people praying out loud and putting their hands on me. But it was such a powerful experience that I felt led to share it with friends. And then, 2 years later, I was invited to be the spiritual nurturer for every 5-day course at Pendle Hill. So for 16 different groups, I led them for 2 sessions. The first session, we did a lot of experiential exercises. In the second session, I said, okay, we're going to pray for each other in small groups. I did this with every kind of group that came, Quakers that were visiting the Quaker United Nations, Quakers that were studying historical Quakerism, Quakers who were here to do photography, Buddhist groups, and almost all of them, when I said this is what they're going to do, looked at me with panic in their faces. And some people even said, do we have to do this? But what happened when people actually did it in small groups with people they had gotten to know during the week, they found it such a blessing to have people say these loving words and remind them of God's presence. And most people actually felt it was even more of a blessing to pray for other people, and they felt this spiritual power moving through them. That was really, so you'd see people come back from their small groups, no matter how resistant they were when they left, they'd come back and you could see it's like blessed. Their faces relaxed and happy and joyous. It was wonderful. So I've been teaching Quakers to do that in small groups ever since. Appreciating inner images. I've mentioned that images are sometimes a more primary way that the Spirit communicates with us. And helping each other pay attention to those images is one of the things we can do in faithfulness groups and clearness committees and other groups. Dreams and visions are also sometimes really important, and for some people are an important source of guidance. And so it can be helpful to, if someone feels that they want to share a dream and their thoughts about the dream, and to remember that our job is to ask questions. I mean, there are dream groups in which you can share your ideas about what the dream might mean if you had it. But in a faithfulness group, it's more asking questions to understand what the person's experience is. Another skill that I talk about is mirroring, which is as someone talks to you about their experience and their prayer and their sense of a leading or a call or their whatever is blocking them, you may notice what's going on in them, and then you can mirror back, not interpret what you see, but say, oh, when you said that, this beautiful smile came across your face. When you said that, you suddenly relaxed and took a deep breath. When you said that, tears came to your eyes. When you said that, you hunched over like this. So you're just sort of reflecting back what you see, and then you can say, what was going on there? And invite them to tell more. Some of those are some of the more powerful questions, is to ask them what was going on at a particular moment. Or you may hear a moment where you really, you see that the grace of God was there, and you can say, what was happening can you say more about what was happening at that moment? I mean, most of us are not used to having safe places in which to talk about our spiritual experiences. So when we do talk about them with our Clearness Committee or faithfulness group or spiritual friends, we may sort of speak really quickly. Oh, then this beautiful thing happened. And the group can say, say more about that. How was God with you? How was Spirit with you at that moment when that happened? And sort of invite them to savor their experience. The thing is that oftentimes those spiritual experiences we haven't spent enough time with. We haven't fully received the gift that the Spirit was offering us in that moment. And if the group asks us to go and savor it, to stay there, to notice what was happening, more can unfold in the experience. Another kind of mirroring is to name the gifts we see in each other. Many times we don't know our gifts as well as the people around us do. And in fact, traditionally among Quakers, it was the community that named the gifts that they saw in one another. So I mentioned that one part of the power of early friends was that they recognized, to their dismay, that their society was really not in accordance with God's ways, not in accordance with God's truth and justice and mercy, equality, and that they were called to live, if they wanted to be faithful, they were called to live in different ways from their society. That was difficult. It's difficult to be different from your society, and it can actually lead to persecution, losing friends, mockery, family members disowning you. It depends upon what it is. It can lead to very painful things. Being asked to live in countercultural ways or to take, a countercultural message to others can require some sacrifice. So it takes courage to be countercultural. It takes courage and community. But one of the things early friends found, one of the things I learned from early friends, is that they formed these intensely loving, interconnected communities because they did experience this together, that they experienced being ostracized or persecuted or suffering in some way, and that bonded them, and there was a tremendous love that they experienced because of it. So part of our task in these faithfulness groups, Clearness Committees, spiritual friendships, is mutual accountability. We may get clear about a leading. Oh, I'm called to go and do this thing. It's a little risky. And then, half a year later, your committee can say, well, where are you with that? Let's talk about it. Bring it to us. Tell us what the challenges are so that we can help you look at that. The Guide to Faithfulness Groups, I learned the format for this from my experience at the Shalem Institute in their program for spiritual guidance for people who are spiritual directors or called to talk with people one-on-one about their spiritual lives. The Shalem Institute has a format for peer groups of spiritual directors, and for 9 years I was part of a peer group of Quaker spiritual directors. And another friend who was part of that for a while, Laura Melly, said, oh, you know, this format can be widened out for to support friends in all their calls and leadings and ministries and any way that they want to be faithful. And so we started experimenting with that. We use that as the core of the Way of Ministry program that happened here at Pendle Hill, and it's now the core of the Nurturing Faithfulness program that's happening in New England. So it's kind of a rigid format, you know, in that hour that each person gets, you get 15 minutes to present. You have a very brief time for any clarifying questions. You have 35 minutes for deeper questions. Some people feel constrained by that format, especially initially. And then over time, you begin to realize that having that format frees you up. You don't have to decide every time, are we going to give more time this week to Joan and less time to Tracy? Because Joan seems to have a more pressing problem. So, and it's like the format frees you to just flow from one thing to the next. But there are times when spontaneity or experiments are useful. You know, sometimes someone will say, I don't need questions tonight, I need prayer. Okay, so there is a certain amount of openness to how the Spirit is moving among the group. Friends in New England, in the 2 programs in New England related to nurturing faithfulness, have said over and over again that really the heart of these faithfulness groups is love. That this profound love can happen. It's a spiritual love for members of your meeting, for people that as people reveal themselves and reveal their vulnerability and reveal their hopes and desires and fears, it's just natural for love to flow toward them. And when they receive that love, it's natural for love to flow back. And that's the strongest element of a faithfulness group or any group that's seeking together to be faithful. And that I'm running near the end of my time, so I have to move forward quickly. I want to say that that in the 2 programs we've had in New England on nurturing faithfulness, the first one had 2 people in it, and the second offering of the program had 4 people in it. That's Friends Meeting of Cambridge. And Friends Meeting of Cambridge, which is a very large meeting, now has 8 faithfulness groups. 2 of them have 6 people, 2 of them have 5 people, and 4 of them have 4 people. So Jennifer Hogue has written to me about that. She said 2 of them were started during the first offering of the program. And then she led a book study group, shameless self-promotion, using this book. And that encouraged those 4 people to take the second offering of the program, and they started 3 more faithfulness groups. And then she led a workshop about faithfulness groups, and 2 more groups formed. And then she wrote, 1 started spontaneously in response to all of this faithfulness activity. So this is a large meeting and an extraordinary story. But even some small meetings have found that they have had multiple groups forming because people were really interested in this, and that they have found it really helps to revitalize their meetings. You know, when more people are getting attention to faithfulness in their lives. I'm running near the end of my time, so I will have to summarize briefly. That we're living in historically turbulent times. And I've heard a lot of doomsday scenarios. It seems like the situation, I'm sort of shocked at how serious the situation is, and how even though I've sort of known about it, you know, for 30, 40, since I was a little kid, it's a lot more serious than I knew. And yet, as I said, there is still hope. There's hope because those who are predicting doom are only sort of basing things on the way things have been. And there is a spiritual power that can come through, and these unknown capabilities, and this enormous creativity. I'm not saying that we can stop some of the problems that are coming, that we've created collectively. but something else can emerge. If we're faithful, something beautiful can emerge also in our time. And I have been a witness to, and in small ways a participant in, healing miracles. For many, many years, there was a meeting for prayer and healing that happened in this room on Sunday evenings. And some people reported extraordinary, unexpected healing experiences. I think if we put our capacities for healing toward healing the earth, that things may happen that we don't expect. I don't know, but I'm feeling myself personally that I'm called to more. And I think maybe most of the people in this room are feeling that we're called to more. And we need to help each other find out what that's about. What are we called to? Who are we really? Who are we called to be? How can we help each other draw forth the best gift we can give our world at this time? So since I've reached the end of the time, I'm going to invite Tracy to sing a chant that was also created at Pendle Hill and to teach it to us. And then we'll have a time for questions.
So the words to this chant are, abide in me as I abide in you. We are one. And I know that quite a few of you know it already. And so I'm just going to start to sing it, and then as you learn it, you can join. And we're going to sing it for a while. I don't really know how long. We'll sort of let Spirit guide us for how long, right? Abide in me as I abide in you. We are one. We are one. Abide in me
Does anybody have a question or comment? Bring you the microphone if you do.
The question you asked us, when am I faithful? That's a really important question, and it took me the longest. It took me a while to answer it, so I didn't listen to some of the because I was really thinking about that and applying it to me, and I'm experiencing what that word means right now, because I think when I'm faithful, it's when I'm allowing myself to be led. And I've never experienced that so clearly. I don't think I really was trying to be led. And the example is that I just retired and everything was structured, all these things. And I am now really spending more time listening and figuring out what seems to make my heart beat faster, or some of the things you're saying. And as a result, like I'm taking for the first time this godly play and faith and play, and I just happened to hear it in meeting, and I didn't have long to decide if I wanted to do it. And the point is that I just started to listen to myself and just allow myself to be led. And I've noticed, and just take one step and then think and reflect and be silent and then take another. So I am grateful for you asking that question of me. And I'm sorry I didn't have this up to my mouth. So, but it's really is for me allowing myself to be led, because I was always doing the leading.
Right. So thank you for sharing that discovery. Thank you.
Good evening, fellow friends or non-friends. I came here with a friend, and I have stayed here a couple of years ago for one night. I come from a tradition of atheism, agnosticism, how do you call enjoying life to the fullest? I don't know what that is, but it doesn't involve any being faithful to anything but enjoying yourself. This is our culture worldwide. This is where I am not faithful, but when I am in the midst of people who are completely different from me, I am faithful. I was in Wilmington 2 years ago at an art. I just walked into a place, perhaps some of you know Eunice LaFate. She is an artist in Delaware who won the folk art. She got an award for her paintings. She invited me to the Church of Peace, which was right down the street, and there I was with the only white person there, and I felt faithful. I felt faithful when I did not want for anything else. I feel faithful when I want so desperately for there to be some vision worldwide that brings us to a point of a new world, and that is why I was led here tonight. I didn't plan it, somebody said, I'm going, and if anyone wants to go with me, I said, sure. It sure beats the meeting that I've been going to for quite some time.
Thank you. Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Oh, that was not a friends meeting that I referred to.
I actually am going to take the mic privilege since I have it. I've been thinking a lot about what is profoundly hard at being faithful to that of God in ourselves. And just a thing that came so strongly to me in your talk was the way we withhold that of God in ourselves from each other. And the way I withhold the way it's terrifying. And the way we withhold from that of God in ourselves, and the way we withhold from that of God in each other because of just both how powerful how powerful that could be, and the responsibility that comes with that. And so I question a lot about the times when I'm waiting to be led by something else, or withholding from the leading that is rising inside, or rising amongst us. And I'm just waiting for something else to lead the way, because it can be very scary if you just embrace that of God in ourselves and amongst ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for your courage in speaking to us. That helps all of us to have courage to speak the truths that we discover. I saw O. No, give it to O first.
Can you remind us what first you asked us one question, it was,
They were pretty similar.
they were similar, but they're slightly different. Because I remember my response, but I don't remember the question.
The first question was, when have you felt faithful? And the second question was, ask your heart, when am I faithful?
Oh, See, I think I was thinking it was when have you been faithful? And then the other one was, when do you feel faithful, or something like that.
That is, yes, whenever you felt faithful, that's sort of about asking about your past, yeah. And when are you, it's like asking about the present. Mm-hmm.
Well, the first one, whatever, one of them I just felt like it was all very interpersonal, like when I'm with my important people in my life, basically my kids or my good friends or something like that. And then the other one was so different. It was like an emotion.
Your heart.
Maybe. It was just felt like it was when I feel. I guess you feel when you're with your family, but it just felt like a very different answer somehow, the way you asked those questions.
I expected it would. Yeah, when we pay attention to our heart, the way it communicates to us feels different, and often is more direct, and often is surprising. Surprising because we don't pay enough attention to what our heart, the wisdom in our heart, to what our heart is feeling, what our heart is trying to communicate to us. And heart is really, it's not the organ, it's sort of like a center of perception in our body that we speak of as heart or heart center. Or
So I noticed that when I wrote the words, Lord, listen to your children, it was supposed to be praying. What I wrote was, Lord, listen to your children playing. Yeah, and so there is a faithfulness in that. What I'm aware of is I live on the only planet that has life on it at the level in which it has life on it. Kittens and butterflies and turtles and the list just goes on and on and on. And in some ways, I choose to believe a part of our lost faithfulness is we don't play. And I choose to believe that God actually has gifted us this planet as a playground. This is our playground, and we're not playing. And what a waste. And so thank you. I don't know how that happened. It's kind of like my friend over here. But thank you for whatever frequencies and vibrations you were swirling in space that I was able to hear.
my pleasure.
I was able to hear, Lord, listen to your children playing.
Jim had his hand up for a while.
I was thinking about what you said about the power in the early France. And one thing came to me, among others, which is there's a difference between knowing about something and being with someone. And so people study about God, and some people spend time with God. Not, as it turns out, not the same thing at all. And the image that came to my mind, I was thinking, for some reason, not the still small voice, but the still small flame, like a candle flame. And the image was looking at the candle flame and becoming aware of it, allowing oneself to be with it and allowing oneself to be warmed by it, and finding oneself enveloped in it and being part of it, and realizing that there's a great deal of power in that, but there's also a lot of fright to be overcome, except any time we get to know anyone, we kind of have to deal with that.
Thank you.
I am one of those people who is uncomfortable with the anthropomorphic word God, because we talk about him, we cast him in our image, he's an authority figure. I'm not comfortable with that. What I am comfortable with, and what drew me to Quakerism and why I take such comfort, is that we talk about the light and the spirit. And to me, we all have the human spirit. We're all in this together. And the only thing we can give each other is love, to help each person on his path. For me, that often just takes the form of a hug, a very tight hug that says, I hear you, I love you. Be comforted and guided on your path. That's all I can do. One of the earlier talks this year, here in the first Monday, was a young man who was in terrible pain. He, as a child, had seen his father kill his mother. And he had just brought himself to the point that he could talk about it. And when his father was released from prison, he felt it was his calling to kill him. And he stood across the street from his apartment building and waited for him to come out. And he wrestled with this and wrestled with it, and finally was able to overcome it and reach out to him, took him home, introduced him to his children. His children were thrilled to have a grandfather. But it was clearly terribly painful. And he said, when this is over, he had visuals. He had taken film, I don't know quite how. But he said, when this is over, don't ask me any questions. I'll have to rest a while. So I raised my hand and said, I wouldn't presume to come physically and hug you, but please consider yourself hugged. And he said, do you want to hug me? And I said, yes. And I did. And that's all I have ever done to any of the people I know in this room, and all that's ever been done for me is just a hug.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Oh, and we have 4 hands. Lena, you choose.
All right, raise them high then. I saw Maurice first, but he's right. Oh, Terry.
I love the cartoon. So we've just heard a lecture on faithfulness. What's it like to be faithful? You just did it tonight. What's it like for you to be faithful in front of this crowd of people? You did that tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I'm in a room full of friends. And I feel a lightness on my heart. Thank you. So thank you to Pendle Hill. The bookstore is open. They're hoping you'll buy copies of my books and my pamphlets. They've spread them out neatly, and I will sit at a table and sign if anyone does buy one, or if you have one that you brought with you, I'd be happy to sign it. And I'd be happy to answer questions that didn't get time right now. Is there anything more you want to say, Lena? Okay. Thank you, friends.
Simon wanted me to share that there are snacks and that you should eat them in the kitchenette.